Can't spell Hollow Knight without higher beings. Well, that's a complete lie, but it makes the intro sound a bit more interesting, so please bear with it. From the silk-stricken halls of Farloom, to the deep passageways of the Lifeblood caves, to Mr. Mushroom himself, the presence of higher beings is definitely felt inside of Silksong, and in today's video I want to discuss all of them and delve fully into their lore. Just a quick disclaimer before the video starts. I just wanted to say a bit of a disclaimer. I'm currently having some building work done on my house, so that means I've had to vacate my room where all my setup is, and I'm currently under the stairs like fucking Harry Potter, so I just wanted to say, if the audio is a bit different, that's why, and I'm sorry. A small percentage of the people that watch these videos are actually subscribed. If, and only if, you do enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel, and it lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. Grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy. We're first going to discuss Grandmother Silk. Grandmother Silk is a higher being which spreads her silk across Farloom. She's responsible for a plethora of things, but let's first talk about her appearance. Grandmother Silk is loosely based off a spider. It's definitely not a one-to-one match, but there are definitely some connections. The first of which being silk. Silk is typically a media associated with spiders. Now in truth there are other species which can spin silk, but spiders are the one that's more commonly displayed inside of media. That by itself wouldn't be enough, but if you look at the body of Grandmother Silk, you'll notice this big butt-like bit on the back. Now of course she could have had a Brazilian bum lift, but she's a bug, and if you look at the anatomy of a spider, you'll see it's got the abdomen on the back bit. This is also in the same location as Grandmother Silk's big round butt. As I said previously, it's not one-to-one. I mean, inside of Silksong, she's got two arms. You know, it's not exactly the same, but I definitely think there was some inspiration brought when creating Grandmother Silk. When Grandmother Silk arrived inside of Farloom is unknown, but we can infer from multiple details that the changes were very significant. The first example we're going to talk about is the Weavers. The Weavers are in part children of Grandmother Silk. And let's just clear this up, they are her children. Inside of Silksong there are a few bits of dialogue where Weavers are saying that, oh, she lied to us, we're not actually her children. But they were transformed by Silk, given sentience. This isn't a privilege that is given to just anyone. Others would later try and replicate this, but there are only a few that Grandmother Silk herself gave silk to. Phantom and Lace are beings weaving out of silk. They are called canonically the children of Grandmother Silk. If they are considered the children of her, why aren't the Weavers? The Weavers originally started out as something called Farlids, before they were struck by Grandmother Silk and completely changed. They were given higher consciousness and were given demigodly powers. They were reshaped in Grandmother Silk's image. They might not have started off as the children of Grandmother Silk, but they certainly are now. It wasn't long though until the Weavers became dissatisfied with Grandmother Silk and plotted to escape Farloom. Inside of Weave Nests you can find maps detailing ways out of Farloom. This shows it was a premeditated act to ditch and run away from Farloom. After leaving Farloom they'd eventually end up in Hollow Nest, where we see in the original Hollow Knight they've set up in Deep Nest. But at some point Grandmother Silk began hunting the Weavers. We see this in a hidden little chamber near the cradle. We see multiple left behind cages like the one Hornet arrived in. One such cage says stake to service. This is the same thing that happened to Widow. Now whether or not this is the same cage Widow came in is never directly confirmed, but I think it's very likely. Widow has two stakes staked throughout her back. She also has been driven mad. It seems very likely she was captured by Grandmother Silk. And as the cage said, stake to service. It makes no sense to leave the safety of Hollow Nest. The only explanation I can see is they wanted to make sure they did not lead Grandmother Silk to Hollow Nest and to Hornet. Hornet is special. She's a child of Worm and Weaver. If anyone was going to destroy Grandmother Silk, it would be her. When you put it like this, it makes a lot of sense they ran away from Hollow Nest. A little TLDR for her story, it's basically one big family sitcom. Silk is a magical energy that originates from Grandmother Silk. She uses this silk to control the minds of her inhabitants. She manipulates everything in her realm, and we see the consequence of this in Silksong. Hideous experiments were conducted in the White Ward, fusing silk with other beings. Only they lacked the finesse of Grandmother Silk, and monstrosities were formed. Grandmother Silk is a piece of shit, and it really makes you appreciate the kind of good king the Pale King was. The next one we're going to talk about is never directly said to be a higher being, but I think there's enough evidence to say that she is. Fayforn is the creature that we find atop Mount Fay. She's also the way that we get the Fay Down Cloak. The Fay Down Cloak is definitely very interesting. It gives us two abilities. The first of which is the ability to have bloody wings. We just up and fly when we have the Fay Down Cloak. The second ability, and the most interesting, is the cold. We don't feel it anymore. Before having the Fay Down Cloak, you can die due to frost, but after, you cannot. The Fay Down Cloak is made from the feathers of Fayforn. She has the ability to survive the cold. The fact the mount is literally called Fay, and she's called Fayforn, it's quite obvious there is a massive connection between the cold, Fayforn, and Mount Fay. But what is that connection? The answer is in part given to us by Mr. Mushroom and the Weavers. Most of the Weaver dens give the idea that they are used to hide away, but there are two examples which give the idea they're used for something else: research and understanding. These two are the one found in the Void, and the absolutely massive one found at Mount Fay. In the Void, we can see tablets where they have descriptions of Void given form. It very much looks like they were researching the Void. And as we'll talk about in a minute, the Void is a higher being. The same, I believe, is the case with Mount Fay. They worship this being. On the screen right now is some text from the scroll left by the Weavers. The most interesting part, I believe, is the fact they were communing with the creature atop this mount. They saw this creature as something to be hailed. The creature was just as likely to give them death as it was insight. Fayforn was put on a pedestal that was above the Weavers. The Weavers are basically demigods. The only thing higher than them is higher beings, which is exactly what I believe Fayforn is. More proof that she is a higher being comes from Mr. Mushroom. When it comes to our interactions with Mr. Mushroom, we have to chase him around, we have to follow his riddles. Mr. Mushroom does not do this for Fayforn. Mr. Mushroom goes to her. This shows the respect Mr. Mushroom has for her, and I think it says a lot, even if not directly, what kind of being Fayforn is. I also wanted to mention, even though it's not directly said, I find it very suspicious that the Weavers had such a massive weave nest inside of Mount Fay. And I believe the answer is Grandmother Silk couldn't get there. When it comes to other ailments inside of Silksong, you can normally use silk to cleanse yourself, for example bile water. But when it comes to Mount Fay, no silk will be able to remove the frost. This suggests that even silk is weak to the frost of Mount Fay, which is why I believe there's such a massive weave nest. The Weavers sought insight from Fayforn. Perhaps that was how they figured out how to escape Farloom and to remain undetected for such a long time. As I said previously, this is not confirmed, but I do think it is a very likely possibility, as I think there is multiple points that suggest this. I also love how this connects all the higher beings and different characters together. It really makes the world of Farloom feel alive and connected. A final thing on Fayforn, what do you all think that this is actually based off? A lot of the different creatures and higher beings inside of Silksong, inside of Hollow Knight, are based off some kind of animal or some kind of concept. As it stands right now, I really can't picture what it's actually based off, but I'm willing to bet there is something. The next one is the Void. The Void is a substance that originates below the bedrock of the world of Hollow Knight. It's steeped in mystery, but there are things we can infer and we're told about. Long ago, a Void civilization existed. Just how long ago this was, we really don't know. But the fact the Weavers inside of Farloom are seemingly investigating the Void after the Void civilization, and the fact they themselves are ancient, really says a lot. Inside the first Hollow Knight, we are not privy to much information, but there are snippets of information. The first of which being the Soul Totems. These Soul Totems are said to be a remnant of this bygone age. The bygone age where the Void was the main civilization that lived in Hollow Nest. The Soul Totems contain soul. I believe the term soul is something that is not unintentional. Soul is often described and used in media as a way to show empathy, to show intellect. For example, if someone says, oh, something lacked soul, it normally means it lacks personality. That is something the Void is accredited with quite a lot. I find it very interesting this Void civilization is gathering soul, or better put, was. How could such a powerful civilization, one which commands the Void itself, simply disappear without hardly any trace. Well, like with many civilizations, I believe their undoing was themselves. Multiple denizens of this civilization and multiple people and tablets we see inside the void talk about wanting to be emotionless, to become one with the void and to lose their individuality. Considering this is the void civilization, it makes me think, just why on earth would they then try and collect soul if their civilization is based upon being emotionless, based upon the void? While there is no concrete proof, I believe this is the best explanation of where this civilization went. They learned how to harvest and use soul, and they transcended, growing up from their emotionless states. This is also perhaps an explanation on the snail shamans. They possess void characteristics, considering some spells, when you get the upgrade, actually come from entrapped snail shamans. Not to mention, in Act 3, it's the snail shamans themselves which summons the void. The snail shaman talks about their family's fixation on the void. The nail in the coffin for me is the fact the snail shamans are masters of soul. They use it all the time. I think there is a lot of connections here, although I will say this has never been proven. It's never been confirmed, but I do think it is likely. Inside of Farloom, this void is present. Grandmother Silk is entrapped by the snare. In a last-ditch attempt, she tries to escape. The consequence of this is almost bringing Farloom down with her. Void is everywhere. The thing I find very fitting is the void isn't doing this out of malice. Something was promised to it, Grandmother Silk, and it intends to take her. It's a being governed by logic, not by emotion, saying that the knight does appear as the Lord of Shades, and shows emotion by saving Hornet and Lace. This adds more questions than answers. For if the void is completely emotionless, if it's governed on logic, why did the knight save Hornet? There is no reason why Hornet needed to be saved. If anything, she'd be a threat to the void. She hates it. So why would the knight save her? Considering we see the Lord of Shades, the knight is the god of gods in this current timeline. That means it is the god of gods. It is the higher being of the void. The fact that it shows emotion says a lot about the void, and brings up a lot of questions, as I previously said. Perhaps the void is not as emotionless as we originally thought. Perhaps everyone, the scholars, the relic seekers, maybe they were all wrong. Maybe it isn't so emotionless. I mean, look at the vessels. Not one of the vessels managed to be emotionless. They all gained a mind, a will to think. I think that says more about the void than it does the Pale King. In all the lore we get, there's a duality. Half says they're emotionless, half says they have emotions. I'm going to leave it up to all of you to decide which one you think is best. I thought it was very fitting, considering the last point was on the Abyss and its higher being, that we talk about the Lifeblood and its higher being, considering surprisingly it has a lot of connections to the Abyss. Inside of Act 3, Lifeblood overtakes the Wormways. It mutates and transforms the creatures that inhabit it. Zalitel and his apprentice spread these Lifeblood seeds around the Wormways. But it's only in Act 3 that these cocoons evolve, transform and spread even further. Coincidentally, at the same time the Abyss arrives. The connection to the Abyss actually goes further. In the first Hollow Knight, in the Abyss, is a Lifeblood chamber. It's actually more like a dream realm, for we see the Dreamcatcher symbols only in a blue tint. Located all around are blue butterflies and Lifeblood. Eerily blinking at you in the dream is a creature the game files call the Abyss creature. The Abyss creature has blue eyes, Lifeblood eyes. And as you'll see in a minute, I believe this is the higher being associated with Lifeblood. I am 99.999% sure. We only see this creature twice in game, and they're both inside of dreams. This is something another being also has in common with it. Both of these beings spread their influence out throughout the realm, but only are able to be seen within dreams. The connection goes even further. Lifeblood is symbolised by butterflies. The Radiance is symbolised by moths. These two species are actually from the same insect order. The Light infection and the Lifeblood infection are eerily similar. Hornet herself even makes a comment on this inside of Zalitel's questline. Both the infection of the Lifeblood and of the Radiance destroys faculties from the mind. There are two characters that don't lose their mind, one being Joni and the other being a Radiance priest, though I believe they are the exception to the rule, as we don't see this kind of thing anywhere else. There are even more parallels between this Abyss creature, the Lifeblood, and the radiance and its infection. First of all, blue is the main colour for Lifeblood. Orange is the main colour for the radiance. Those are both complementary colours. That little bit was mentioned by a comment in the last video and I haven't been able to get it out of my mind. Lifeblood originates in roots. It can also be found deep in the abyss. It's symbolised by below. In contrast, the radiance is symbolised by the sun, quite literally in the boss fight. It is once more an obvious parallel. What does this abyss creature want? My personal opinion is we cannot comprehend what it wants. It is a higher being, and much like the radiance, is beyond our comprehension. Very Eldritch Lovecraftian style. One thing that is certain though, is this spells nothing good for Farloom. And soon, I believe in a possible next DLC, we will get more on Lifeblood. I believe in fact an Act 4. It is left on a cliffhanger. There is so much more they can do with the story of the Lifeblood, and I think it's wasted not doing anything with it. Inside of Hollow Nest, the Pale King purged and cleansed its halls of the Lifeblood. Hornet herself mentions that in her time inside her homeland, the caves were once filled with Lifeblood. That is not seen inside of Hollow Nest, inside the first game. Meaning the Pale King removed it, but inside of Farloom's case, there is no Pale King to save its kingdom. My last video was actually centred around Lifeblood, so I'm not going to go too far into it. If you want a more in-depth look into it, make sure to go check out this one you see on the screen right now. The next one is one that surprisingly and upsettingly has hardly any lore, and that makes me think it's going to have a DLC even more. I am of course talking about the Steel Seers. This faction can only be found in Steel Soul mode. The Steel Seers answer to an unseen master, but Team Cherry has been hyping up these guys for years. They were in the first game as well. Jin and Confessor EG are both associated with the Steel Soul. EG is the same as the creature that is also found in the Steel Soul quest. And Steel Soul Jin looks to be made of the same material as the Steel Seer. They're probably not the same thing, but there is definitely a connection here. And Team Cherry is building up a story between this faction. All the beings of the Steel have one thing in common: immortality. We most likely find the answer for this in the quest item we get at the end of the Steel Soul quest. The Steel Seer says this is a part of Z, that it's a place from his home. Funnily enough, the material, the metal that we see on this item is almost identical to the material used on the Steel Seers. Further proof of this is this item never goes away. Once you consume it, after a certain amount of time, it will regenerate, just like the Steel Seers. Z, which is the Steel Seer inside of Silksong, after a long period of not being talked to or activated, if you hit it, it will regenerate. It will look brand new. The disturbing and dark part is the fact when you consume this item, you get shell shards. If you don't know, shell shards are made up of shell and bone. When you put this into perspective, it seems very likely the Steel Seers and all to do with steel are in fact made out of bone. That they are made at the remnants of creatures long past. And it paints a very disturbing picture. I definitely think this is getting a DLC. Further proof is in an interview a while back. Team Cherry actually talked about how there is going to be steel assassins that are going to chase you inside of Silksong. This is not something that happens in the main story. And considering we saw steel characters inside one of the trailers, not to mention there is a whole steel storyline, I definitely feel that there is going to be a DLC for this. And I honestly can't wait. Oh, and just a final nail in the coffin. At the top of the cradle, in the same place we were talking about the whole widow bit, you can actually find a cage which talks about taking a weaver in parts from under a city of steel. Coincidence? I definitely don't think so. This root parasite is actually a higher being, and it links to the White Lady very well, and to the root species of higher beings they both are. First of all, the root parasite baby, which is really weird looking, can be found inside of bile water. It's found in this masses of branches, which we later know as ashen vines. If you give this to Greyroot, he will send you on your merry way and send you down a quest to find polyp hearts. Once retrieving them, he will infect you. He will implant the parasite deep within your shell. Once it's done, you cannot use silk. This process actually kills Greyroot, because if you come back later, He's one of those ashen vines, painting a disturbing picture on what caused all those ashen vines to appear when the baby parasite was born. If you defeat Grandmother Silk while infected, the parasite will consume Grandmother Silk and yourself. You will see yourself and Grandmother Silk as ashen vines, before something massive decides to break out. We don't see the creature itself, and yet the area that we do see in this ending cutscene reminds me heavily of what we see with the White Lady's own cocoon. And not just the ending, but also the Twisted Bud itself. For a very long time there's been a lot of questions on what exactly the White Lady is, and I believe this questline answers that question. And yet, like usual, also gives way more questions. For example, the White Lady is the mother of the night. The vessels were thrown down into the abyss as eggs. If the Twisted Bud and the White Lady are the same thing, then it would make sense that this Twisted Bud would have to reproduce and spread its seed to be able to create new Twisted Buds, the baby version. Assuming the processes are the same with the White Lady, how does that interfere with the process of creating vessels, i.e. the knights and its other siblings? Unfortunately, we're never given an answer, but further proof there is a connection is what Greyroot is wearing. Greyroot is wearing a cloak. This cloak is very similar to what we see actually on the body of the knight. This cloak isn't actually a cloak. It's wings, ones that have been denatured due to the void. Now either Greyroot is imitating this species, or he is one himself. I believe he's more imitating them. We can also see this twisting sort of shape we see on the knight's wings on the White Lady. Although they never actually open up, if you go into Godhome and you see the White Lady, it's very possible what we see there is actually her wings unfolded, and perhaps what the knights would have if they had the proper body given to them at birth. Once more, like the Steel Soul, there is so much more to do with the Root People, and unfortunately I don't think we're going to get a DLC. I'd really, really, really love to hear all of your opinions on what you think this means. The final higher being is by far, in my opinion, the most interesting. We are, of course, talking about Mr. Mushroom. Mr. Mushroom is a herald of ages. When he arrives, a new age has ended, and a new one begins. We know Mr. Mushroom is immortal. Such dialogue in the first game as, "Caps and shells may fall to dust, but Mr. Mushroom readjusts." Funnily enough, in real life, fungus can technically be immortal. They can live and grow for thousands of years. If one part dies, that part can then grow and flourish as a new fungus sprout. This rhyme hints at the immortality that Mr. Mushroom possesses. This is further proven when you see little bits of dialogue where he talks very casually about kingdoms falling and new ones arising. The way he talks about Hollownest makes it seem as if it was a really short period it's been around. It's been around for a very long time, as we see in the lore. But to Mr. Mushroom, it's been hardly any time, and this is seen inside of Silksong. At the end of Mr. Mushroom's questline, he talks about how in a very, very distant future, Hornet may be the only one that is capable of becoming like him. Now what does that entail? What exactly is it to be like Mr. Mushroom? The first answer that is most likely to come to mind is to be a herald of ages. Now of course this is one part of it, but there is so much more. Mr. Mushroom has very distinctive eyes. This is actually seen 2 other times inside of Hollow Knights, and those are the 2 mask makers. They both have these same swirly eyes. We thought in the first game that it simply showed insanity, but Mr. Mushroom has it, and the mask makers, both of them, have it as well. It is not a coincidence. Is it also a coincidence that the mask maker inside of Silksong is found at Mount Fay, the same location where Mr. Mushroom ventures himself? I believe all 3 of these characters are from the same faction. It's never confirmed, but I do believe there is enough evidence to suggest this. In Hollow Knight, when the knight asks where Hornet was, where the gendered child was, Mr. Mushroom simply says, "Trust the moon," or perhaps trust yourself. What does Mr. Mushroom do at the end of Silksong's questline? Mr. Mushroom bloody shoots up into the sky like a rocket. There are wind and storms inside of Hollow Knight. We see a land of storms. If such things as weather from our world are there inside of Hollow Knight, why can't there be a moon? The question now is though, if there is a moon, what is the significance to the lore? And the answer to that question is I don't know. We're only given one line about the moon inside of Hollow Knight, and that's not much to go on. but I do believe it's there, and I do believe that is where Mr. Mushroom is going. Also, I just want to say, when it's saying trust the moon, it's not talking about, oh, use the moon to find the gendered child, to use it as a sort of navigation device. The majority of Hollow Nest is found deep underground. There's only a few situations where we actually go to the surface, and those situations are not where we find Mr. Mushroom. A final thing with Mr. Mushroom. Mr. Mushroom and its tablets are symbolised by yellow. Yellow is a primary colour. He seems very integral to the world of Hollow Knights, so I find it very fitting that is the colour that he has. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel and it lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. See you in the next one, and goodbye.